Stephen, welcome to Canva Conversations. We're good to go.
We are.
And where I wanted to start is nowadays, if somebody looks at your LinkedIn or the stuff that you're doing with your webinars, your business updates, they see business investor, turnaround specialist, AI partner. But I want to go back before that and understand what was that first foray into the business world?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the podcast, first of all, Colin. My first foray in business was actually pretty young. So my mum and dad had a business all throughout my childhood. So when I was 7 or 8, they started a business. I think it was 1999 they started it. And started it from zero, from nothing. Eventually, they grew that business to 400 staff, £35 million of annual revenue. And I grew up with that business. So during school holidays, Easter holidays, whilst my friends were all playing football and having a good time, I was grafting. So I was in the business from an early age. People think as the son of mum and dad, you get things handed to you, but in actual fact, it was much, much more difficult than that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've got two friends that both have very different experiences in that regard. One of them very much almost promoted over his skis early. One of them went and worked at a big firm first and then came in after 2 years, and even then was still like the whipping boy for his dad and almost had to earn his right. But I think if it's more the employees that maybe give you a harder time, like, you're the boss's son, especially west of Scotland, you can imagine the attitude as well. But over time, I think you prove yourself rather than just getting it all handed to you. But I appreciate your experience was grafting hard from 15, 16.
Yeah, so it was a waste management business, and logistics. So I was literally in my school holidays, I was in the back of trailers throwing bags of shit, literal shit into skips. And then from there, started off in the office. So I left school basically full-time to start full-time in the business. I think I was 17 and started off in the office full-time, and had a lot of drivers in the business. So blue collar, rough as fuck. And you had to earn your stripes, because they seen this wee guy coming into the office and try to tell him how to, fix your tackle brakes and all this kind of nonsense.
Or you're not being efficient on the route, etc., etc.
Yeah, and they hated that because there's this wee guy who's, baby faced, doesn't know what he's talking about. He's the son. So you had to work longer hours. You had to learn your craft, even at that early age. So eventually, I kind of worked my way through that. I got the licenses and stuff, the qualifications that I needed to be a transport manager. Quite early on, I think I was 19 when I got my transport manager's license. And that was a kind of tick box for me at the time, because then you got that respect from them. But again, they see the work you put in. I was working crazy hours. I'm glad my mum and dad put me through that at the time. Well, looking back, I do. At the time, I was probably pretty resentful because my pals were out playing football and stuff. But it's standing good said.
Are there lessons that you learned back then that you reflect on now?
Yeah. Learned a lot of stuff towards the end, and particularly, so I was the ops director of that business for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's kind of went under pretty spectacularly after 23 years when I think I was 22, 23.
You'd gone and started your own thing as well by that point, hadn't you?
Yeah. So just after that, started my own thing, but I think the key lesson I learned from that was around people. There was 400 staff, and I was managing all these different types of heads of departments, and then also drivers, salespeople, etc. And they're all different. So I probably learned a lesson that I don't want to manage people. To be honest, it's not my skill.
As indirectly?
Oh yeah. So I'm great with founders, and that's what I do now. But if I look at some of the stuff I'm not good at and don't have the energy for, it's dealing with people and bringing all their shit to it. I mean, I've got to say, being a manager is probably the worst job in the world. In my opinion, because you get paid reasonable, but not for all the shit that comes to your desk. Basically, everybody brings their shit to your desk, and you've got to sort it.
I think if you think about the kind of people that are maybe doing that role as well, they could potentially be difficult to manage as well.
Yeah.
Friends that run trades businesses always talk about when they're scaling with their joinery team or their electricians team or whatever gas engineer team. Some of the personalities involved in that, and some of the technically really good, but can vary depending on what's going on inside their life outside of work. and that's something that's not often accounted for in business, like somebody's personal problems coming into work. And I think you know Jordan Grant from Glasgow, he's got Glasgow Garden Meetings, great guy, really popular guest on the show in 2025, and he was speaking about most people don't have a business problem, they have a personal problem that's showing up in their business. And that happens with staff all the time. So it's like not a personal problem, it's not a career problem, it's a personal problem that's showing up in there, whether that's alcoholism, whether that's a challenge at home, whether that's just taking the piss with the sesh, or it's maybe like a financial thing where they've not managed their money and then they behave out of alignment in their work when they show up. And managing that as a manager is a really difficult skill.
Yeah, and I think it's something you need to have lived through. It's not something I don't think, looking back, I could have just been thrust into that. I had to learn throughout, and I'm quite stoic in the way I think anyway.
Has that developed over time?
Yeah, well, I've always been like that, but when I look back, people misunderstand that and think you're emotionless, but it's more just in check with yourself. And when people were bringing all their sob stories and stuff, and it's not that I don't have sympathy or empathy. It's just right, compartmentalise that, and you know, can we resolve this? I'm a solutions guy, so I look at things logically, and if I see a solution, I can't help myself but right, okay, go and do this. But that's sometimes not what they want to hear. They want a shoulder to cry on, which I learned is not what I'm good at.
Do you know, you've spoken to Callum White as well, really popular guest on your show, really popular. We actually recorded in the studio last March, and he was saying that he had to put in place people within his HR team that could be that shoulder, because as the boss, he is, if you look at the kind of this personality model, he's very like red, like let's go, let's chase it, let's get after it, let's go, solutions. You come to me with a problem, here's your action plan for what you do next. Whereas some people do like to feel that heard, understood, listened to, then they can look at solutions. And typically people that run businesses don't really fall into that camp, and they almost need to hire and outsource that element of the workforce to be a success.
Totally. So yeah, I learned that in my mum and dad's business, but it didn't stop me starting the business and making that mistake, because I got up to like 80 or 90 self-employed members of staff, if you want to call it that, and I realised very quickly I hated it. So yeah, that was a big lesson.
For too long, Brits have not been able to invest like Americans. They've not had the same confidence, the same clarity, or even the same returns. Think Money is here to change all of that, and today's podcast is sponsored and supported by the Think Money Academy. You'll know the founder, David Bell, who was a hugely popular guest on the podcast during 2025, and he has one simple mission. I only care about Brits investing more in shares. Their system teaches you how to trade like a pro rather than a punter, and remove that stress, noise, and chaos of trying to beat the market with things like day trading. And instead, you're going to use non-emotional, systematic, trend-based following. People inside the academy have had incredible returns: 56% on Kratos, 60% on GoDaddy, and even 218% on Robinhood, all by following their framework. If you want to invest today and learn how to invest properly, you can hit the link in the show notes and take the assessment and book a call. And don't forget, you can use the code CAMBRO for 10% off. The link is think-money/academy. When did you start considering starting your own thing? Because I guess when you're working within a family business, sometimes there's that whole loyalty and connection you have to it. Like Steven's going to take the reins once he's old enough, when he comes of age. He's doing the operations director side of things. He's eventually going to become the gaffer. When did you start to say, right, I'm going to go and do my own thing rather than sitting and wait to inherit?
Yeah, I actually didn't enjoy that business, if I'm honest. So waste is not a passion of mine. Waste management is not a passion of mine. So I always had this kind of itch that I wanted to scratch. But I was being geared up to be the heir of that business. You know, I was being geared up to take over. But the kind of, I suppose, epiphany moment, if you want to call it that, was we actually acquired a distressed business during that time, and it was a basket case. It was a real crazy business. It was, I think we inherited or paid 80 staff. We acquired 3 or 4 different depots in England. And it was a kind of eye-opener to the M&A world, what's possible. You could literally, although it was distressed, we got access to all this additional cash flow, additional staff, and it was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of what's possible. I didn't actually start thinking about leaving until that point. When I started my own consultancy business, and by the way, I started a couple of businesses that didn't work. When I first left, I started a little recruitment agency just before COVID, and realised I didn't know fuck all about business, excuse my French. But in terms of starting a business against being in an established business that was already operating, 2 completely different animals.
It's very different, and we're definitely going to talk about mergers and acquisitions, because you were the gentleman that kindly introduced me to Jeremy Harbour, came on the show, and he talked about all these different ways of buying business with your money, which we're definitely going to get into today as well. But when you see that light bulb moment, that you don't always have to start from zero. So your recruitment business started from zero. Your next transport business, which we'll definitely speak about, started from zero. There are other ways to go in once it's already proved the concept and maybe got customers, got some revenue. It's maybe not quite profitable, it's maybe not quite perfect, or it's not streamlined or optimized in the way that you would, but it's got off the ground. Because the first year, and as you well know from my story that we'll talk about on your show, I'm in that phase just now where you're ripping it off the ground with brute force and sheer work and a little bit of talent and skill along the way to get it where we need to get to. But that's not always the case. You don't always need to start from the absolute ground up.
No, you don't. And mergers and acquisitions gives you that platform. But yeah, the little businesses that I did start, Colin, was kind of, I'm glad I'd done it, because it gave me that grounding of understanding cash flow, understanding sales, understanding recruitment. Although I'd done elements of this within the family business, it's different because you've got an established beast. Whereas starting from scratch, as you've just mentioned, you're kind of trying to build the plane whilst you're flying it, and that's pretty tough at the start.
As Phoebe from Friends would say, the phalange's missing. So there's some of it's not quite there, and you're not managing along the way. When it came to doing the transport business, I know that it was timed around the kind of C-19 lockdown period as well. And while that was a difficult period for many, there were some sectors that really thrived within that, and I guess yours was one of those.
It was. So I wouldn't advise anyone to go down this road in terms of a niche, but we were doing parcel delivery. So if you can remember that time, you couldn't shop physically, you couldn't go to the shops, but people who were classed as key workers were delivery drivers. So Amazon, FedEx, all these big companies were absolutely flying. They made a fortune. We were basically a third party to these companies, right? So companies like ours didn't make a huge amount of profit. That's why I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that type of business. It's high revenue, but kind of low margins, and you've got a driver base, which is problematic because they kind of wreck your vans very, very quickly.
Yeah,
and see if you're Amazon drivers.
They're depreciating assets as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So, but again, great business to kind of learn from, because it's very, very quick, and that gave them the platform to do other things. But yeah, that business at that time during COVID or C-19 was very good.
It just boomed, didn't it? Because it's like right place, right time, and you had that experience of managing a fleet previously, so managing a fleet moving forward is different. And I know from my days in insurance costs are one of the biggest things for both waste management but also for courier business as well, because you've got so many drivers on the road, you've got your fleet of vans, and they do always get into bump scrapes, because sometimes they'll drive to a site and they'll have no idea that the access point is not suitable for what they're driving, and then getting a 10-point turn to get out of there is an absolute nightmare.
I've got lots of stories about that I could tell you about. I've had so many drivers over the years, HTVs and vans, just literally go under bridges they shouldn't and take the roof off. I've got pictures of them, but that's the kind of business model that I stay clear from, because those are the types of models that keep you up at night, because they could very quickly get you in trouble.
Do you think that's one of those unteachable lessons? So somebody like yourself could say that on a podcast, and somebody listening could be like, I hear what you say, but I'm going to give it a try, and they only learn that the oven or the stove is hot once they've touched it.
Yeah, it's very true. I think it's easy to make actual revenue in that type of business, and there's a severe lack of good operators in that type of industry. But there's no margin to make, and it's a race to the bottom in many ways. It's the same as quite a lot of industries. And I think, again, I know we're not on to this point yet, but having looked at so many businesses over the last 5 or 6 years, you start finding industries that are just not worthwhile. I mean, if you're going to go into business, you want to make some profit out of the back of it. You don't want to see it all evaporate.
You and I have spoken about this offline, and then you messaged me after I did the kind of going all in podcast for 330. I had a front row seat watching a £50 million business that had some profitable divisions like mine and one other called Build to Rent, and then all these other departments that were basically just a washing machine for money going round and round and round, and they weren't keeping enough at the back end of it. And when HMRC and some of the other things happened to it, they came calling for the money. That business wasn't profitable enough. Like the EBITDA for like 48 million one year was like 600 grand. Like shocking. Like just like, how did you think that this is a feasible business model to carry on doing? And when you see that from a front row seat, you realise that any business you run, again, cheesy phrase, but cliches are there for a reason. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. And if we don't keep that as the foundations for how we're running things, then you are just running a business for the sake of it.
Yeah, totally. And that business you mentioned, that's, from what I understand, is pretty normal. The whole construction industry, for example, although there's niches within that, there was quite a few big construction businesses that went under in the last couple of years.
The Carillion thing really shook a lot of people because they were subbing for them.
Yeah, and there's a problem down the supply chain then, because all the little guys get affected. They go out of business. I think there's more insolvencies now than there's ever been, and there's obviously a lot of reasons for that, economically, politically, which I'm sure we might get into.
Yeah.
But it's important if you've got a business or you're starting a business to try and pick something that one you're good at and you can add something to, but it's going to actually get you something. Otherwise, there's no point, because you're going to restrict the cash flow. You're going to eventually go under and get yourself in a bit of trouble.
The guys that I've always known you as, since we got to know each other through LinkedIn, Instagram, talking about the podcast, kind of business investor, turnaround specialist, that comes after you decide to exit from the transport business, or during that time?
I was actually acquiring businesses whilst I was still operating the transport business. So I used that as a little cash cow, gave me stability and stuff. And I used that time to then build a team and then start looking at acquisition opportunities. So I bought a business in full, 100%, for £1. It's a £3 million business. I think it was 2021, I think it was. And obviously, before you do all this, you get a bit of education, you get some mentors, people are further down the
likes
track.
of Jeremy can open your eyes to what's possible as well.
At the time, to be honest with you, there's a guy, and I'm actually working closely with him just now, a guy called Nick Bradley, who was a mentor early on, 2020. And he gave me some really good insights at the time. So I think it's important to understand that, and to probably skip a few steps, somebody like Alex Hormozy does what I do, but on steroids to an incredible degree. But it's basically the same idea. You find businesses that are undervalued, unloved a little bit, and add value and grow and sell them, basically. But I was starting to buy businesses at that time, but the probably most frequent deal structure that I was using was actually something called consulting for equity, without getting too technical, but where I would acquire a small stake in the business in exchange for fixing their biggest pain point.
Yeah, that's something that you and I have spoken about. We'll pop a pin in that for now as well, because I think that's something that's going to be really valuable to the listeners.
Yeah, you need to rein me in, because I'm bad for going.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I've got plenty of practice over the years. There's people sat in front of me that have been even harder to rein than you, Stephen, I promise you. Have you ever rubbed beef fat on your face? Sounds crazy, but that's exactly what I've been doing since January. Those that know me well know that I'm all about removing toxins from my life. Things like getting a filter from my tap water, not eating ultra processed foods in my diet, even spraying aftershave on my clothes rather than on my skin. And that got me thinking, if I'm not spraying aftershave on my skin because of it disrupting my hormones, what on earth am I putting on when it comes to a moisturiser? So when my good friend Adam Ash and previous guest on the podcast launched No Tox, it was a no-brainer. It's made from all natural ingredients, mainly from raw honey and beef tallow, and my skin has never looked better. If you want to benefit from the tallow glow and remove toxins from your life, then hit the link in the show notes to notoxskincare.co and use the code Colin15 for 15% off. When you start to think about, I can acquire something, so that initial one that you've acquired for £1 that's got a massive turnover, £3 million, really impressive. It's got proof of concept, but it's maybe not quite functioning perfectly because it's available for sale at that price. What are some of the characteristics of a business like that are wrong, that means that the owner is willing to get it off their desk or get it off their hands?
So, yeah, to do that type of deal, naturally there's a problem, right? So it doesn't need to be, so that particular business, it wasn't loss making. It was actually a business that was a competitor of mine, if you want to call it that. It was just about breaking even, but I knew how to kind of optimize it a little bit. But the reason he wanted out was he just absolutely hated the industry. He was fed up with it. He just wanted out. Yeah, totally sickened by it, felt trapped. To do £1 deals, there's got to be a real burning desire, whether it's distressed in some way, maybe the owner's stressed. So a business can be distressed in terms of cash flow, in terms of lack of profit, teams, or it might be physically just the owner's distressed. So they might
health, wellness, everything like that.
Yeah, and there's lots of them.
Of course, yeah, and maybe he's done his time in the trenches and he's not got the stomach for the battle anymore.
Yeah.
And I think you see that particularly with like what quote unquote boomer businesses. There's people that have been in the trench for a long time, and maybe with the way the political and the economic environment's gone in the UK, they're like, actually, we've kind of had enough. Like, I know I'm not at quote unquote retirement age.
Yeah.
What even is retirement age? It's just like a binary number we've just set. But interestingly, Adam Sinclair has been on the podcast, has a big removals business, Sterling Sinclair, and he's just been acquiring, keeping the name of the company that he's acquiring because they built like a brand or whatever. They're like a family business in like different towns in Scotland. And he was laughing to me. He was like, I didn't have like a term for it. Yeah. And like he listened to the Jeremy Harbour episode and he was joking. He was like, I didn't really know what to call it, but I knew I was doing it. And I was basically just looking at people that were maybe late 40s, early 50s, coming up towards late 50s, and just a bit sick of working in this space of removals and storage.
Yeah.
And I'll just go in there and I'll offer them something that works for them, whether that's they stay on for a bit. And again, we can talk about the different structure of those deals as well. And I think it is interesting for a business owner watching just now, if you have a quote unquote competitor that you know is maybe not still got the same stomach for the fight, or there's factors going on that means that it's not going the way they want it to, that could be an opportunity for you to grow quite significantly rather than you just scaling your own business, which we know is possible, but not always at the same rate as if you bring in something that works like that.
Yeah, and there's a massive misalignment between what a business owner typically thinks their business is worth when it's actually worth what a buyer's going to pay for it, because it's only worth what a buyer's going to pay for it.
Where did they get that wrong then? Where does that come from?
So I think it's education. So typically if somebody wants to sell a business, they'll go to a broker, and a broker's job is to get that business on its books. So they'll tell them anything, right? Typically speaking, not all brokers, but typically they will get the financials of the business, and then they'll pump up the value. Oh yeah, we can sell that for 5x on your profit. They don't actually make profit. That's another rabbit hole. But they kind of fudge around the numbers to justify this figure, and that's what's then crystallised in the business owner's mind.
It's called the expectation effect.
Yeah.
If you tell me I can sell my business for 5 million quid, and then somebody else comes in and says, I don't think it's worth 5 million quid, your foundations and your existing beliefs are shaken.
Yeah.
And it takes something to turn you around to that way of thinking, because your benchmark is set at a particular level.
Yeah, your mind's set at that point. It's hard to climb down from that. Yeah.
Even the emotional element as well. So I built this from X to Y.
Yeah.
Okay, but does that mean it's worth whatever figure you've put on it?
Usually not. So there's a huge band of businesses that are maybe profitable on paper, but they're not cash flowing, or they don't have a team around the owner, so everything's relying on them. If you take them out, the whole thing collapses. It's that old, it's again a cliche, as you mentioned. If you were to step away for 30 days, 90 days from the business, what would happen? For most businesses, they'd go under, because everything's going through the founder. The
glue that's holding it together.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's personality led, sometimes it's skill set led, sometimes it's just them being present means that people work harder, or they're more focused and they're more diligent, or they just have a few systems that computer says no if it doesn't go across their desk, whether it's invoices, whether it's quotes, whether it's proposals, whether it's jobs that they're looking at and they might want to price it differently because the owner knows the person they're bidding with. They might be the one that gets over the line rather than the actual salesperson as well.
Totally. Happens all the time. Yeah, you've seen that from the businesses you've been involved in as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I actually don't have anything against founder-led businesses, far from it. But if people are looking to exit, it can't just be about you. One of my sales coaching clients is actually one of the only fitness businesses I work with, which is quite unusual considering my background as well. But they're looking at private equity coming in, and the founder has 2 fitness coaches that work for him, and they're moving from a monthly subscription model for coaching packages to an annual, because it makes it much easier to show private equity what it's going to be worth in the longer term, because they can forecast much easier. And we did some sales coaching because their coaches are now asking for much larger sums of money, a bit uncomfortable with it initially, self-limited beliefs, all that stuff that you can smash through with different scripts and frameworks and processes that I can coach with. But watching that was really interesting, because the investors went, or the potential investors went straight away, we don't like your cash flow model. And he was like, what do you mean? It's really successful. Oh no, but that's monthly. That could change radically. Whereas if it's annual, it's much more predictable, much more easy to see trends. And that's funny. That's his first experience of like having somebody come in and have a snoop around, and straight away they were like, red flag, we're out until that gets fixed. Come back to us in a year when you've got the data.
Yeah, and private equity are basically there to, if they like your business, they'll take it, but they'll take it on their terms, and they're quite, well known for agreeing something on the beginning, and then they'll chip away at that all throughout the negotiations and due diligence. And eventually, you're getting to the point of a week or two before the sale's supposed to happen, and they've chopped 25% off the price. And as the founder of a business where you're then left, should I take this? Should I not? It's too far down the road.
I spoke to a gentleman who's got a fire services business in Scotland, very, very successful indeed. And it was like an 18-month process back and forth to the PE houses. And then they lowballed him in the meeting. And he was like, I put so much time and effort into this, probably a little bit of money as well, because one, the advisors you pay, whether it's my brother on the insurance side, people on the accountancy side, people on the legal side, but also you almost pause some of what you're doing with the actual business because you're looking to sell, which is actually can be fatal for a business if you're not focused on the goal.
Totally. The good news is, especially when it comes to private equity, but even trade buyers, if you're selling to a trade buyer, because most people won't actually sell to PE, it's pretty difficult.
Particular size you are as well.
Exactly. But whoever it is that's buying you can predictably map that out in advance. You can put the systems in place. You can do margin expansion to grow your profits and lower your cost base and all that sort of stuff. Again, people like yourself who can come in and get a sales process organised in a business. These are all things that clearly help the exit value when the time comes, but typically you need to plan that out in advance to get the maximum for your business. Yeah,
it's interesting. So when did your mind start to open to different ways to buy the businesses? You mentioned consulting for equity there, but that initial deal was £1 for a £3 million business. When did you start to be like, right, there's more ways I can do this?
When I was going on calls with people, so I've done, I think, 20 different deals, most of them consulting for equity, and I'll come to that later on in the show. It's maybe an older wrapper for what it is I do now, but I was coming on calls with business owners and they weren't ready for a full sale, or they were distressed and needed some support. So, for example, if a business wanted £1 million, the business owner wanted £1 million, but you look at their figures and you realise nobody on planet Earth is going to give you £1 million. However, I can come in and help you bridge that gap, bridge that delta.
Get it ready for sale.
Yeah. And that's an interesting way to, everyone wins out of that. So no one's going to give them £1 million. That's what they really, really want. So you agree to acquire a percentage of the business in exchange for increasing the profit margins, increasing the sales, putting systems in place to help them get to that level, become more attractive to a potential buyer. And that particular deal structure suits my personality. We're here in Dubai right now, so it allows me to help founders at a high level from anywhere in the world and offer as much value as I can. Again, going back to what we spoke about earlier, it means I'm not dealing with the staff directly, which we've already established I don't like. So dealing with the founder directly, you're dealing with someone who's
more like-minded, Stephen.
Yeah.
They kind of get it. They've probably been over the course, and I think since going self-employed, I do gravitate to spend more time with people who are also self-employed. I've still got lots of close friends that are in employment, typically in really good jobs, because it's just the nature of who you mix with. But people that understand your pain, your sacrifice, and the type of things that you spend your time on, you have a lot of common ground, which means that you sort of get each other from that perspective. So when you're dealing with that type of person, I imagine the personality fit, or at least the approach to business and the approach to making changes, which can be sometimes challenging conversations, work a little bit easier. Yeah, they do. And like anything in business is problem solving, right? So all of us have problems in business and life, whatever. If you can identify those problems, whether it's a sales issue, cash flow, profit, team, whatever the problem is, if you have the skills and network and experience to fix that, that's all it is. It's just a simple problem solution. Yeah. What are some of the biggest problems that you see when you go on those calls? Oh, Jesus. I would say for most businesses, they don't have cash. That's number one. So most of these businesses, I would say 9 out of 10 business owners that I speak to, even big businesses, don't track cash. They don't have a way of bringing cash in quickly, keeping it for longer. It's number one. And that's actually, a business can be profitable but still go out of business because they run out of cash. I mean, you've seen that with David Phillips, yeah, totally. So that's quite common, especially if they're hungry, like lots of overheads and stuff. So cash is probably the number one thing. But then it's when they do have profit, it's not
it's not structured in a way that allows them to get the multiple they're looking for when they're selling. So, and I could tell you a bunch of other problems. Most of them are psychological. I've taken stakes in businesses that are profitable, not just distressed. And again, I've not had to spend a lot of money for those stakes in the businesses because they simply want somebody alongside them, shoulder to shoulder, to speak to, because they can't bring all their problems to their wife or their best pal who doesn't own a business, doesn't understand it. So it's typically, it's cash flow, but also a lot of psychological issues as well.
What are some of the big psychological ones?
Stress. So I think nobody prepares you to be a business owner.
There's not a course for it. Well, there probably is, but it's not something everyone goes through.
Well, you and I both know they don't gear you up for that during school. So you're trained to be a good little employee. So when you do start a business, there's a bunch of pressure. You're doing a lot of different stuff. You've got a lot of different hats on. A lot of it relies on you because otherwise you can't pay your staff at the end of the month, or you're working 70, 80-hour weeks just to keep the lights on. And you might have a successful business, but you're still doing a lot of hours. So a lot of those psychological things are usually back to stress and maybe lack of understanding how to get out of those kind of situations.
Yeah, and that even happens in successful businesses. So we were mentioning before this in the John Cox episode, just came out and it was really popular, and John was getting ready for selling to the Casa Group and then reinvesting back in as one of their main shareholders. And he said if it went on much longer, the personal stress from him getting the business ready for that and the terms of sacrifice he was making to his health, as somebody that played professional rugby, then semi-professional rugby, he was always somebody that tried to look after himself, but he was like, I feel like I'm a little bit overweight, I'm not training as much as I used to, I'm not looking after my diet as much as I used to, and maybe the drinking's maybe catching up with me because he hosts the West End Wine Club and he does a lot of social stuff. When you hear a founder who, and I use the phrase sometimes in the podcast, the broadest shoulders carry the heaviest burden, and I think that's the case in society in general, but it's definitely the case within business. Everyone has a tipping point where they're like, they maybe reach a burnout or they reach some sort of breakdown, which is the furthest thing from what we want when it comes to owning a business. And there's only so long you can carry on doing that. So I guess some of the people you speak to, maybe the stuff looks great. So Cox & Co is on paper doing fantastic, but John was like, actually, I need to look after myself ASAP, and this sale needs to happen within the next couple of months. Otherwise, I'm going to get to a point where I don't want to keep pushing at this level in terms of the intensity.
Yeah, that's so common. And you say, even for successful businesses like Cox & Co, who are clearly mega successful, even somebody like Callum, like I don't think he's somebody that gets stressed at all. But even for the level of his business, Callum White, there will be stresses. We've all got them. I know you said turnaround specialist, and I do a lot of turnarounds, but I've tried to stay away from them recently in the last couple of years because they are... You're almost soaking in all their negativity, and it's not their fault, but it's not an enjoyable experience all the time.
There's only so much of that you can take on, and it's just recognizing that if I've got 1 out of the 20 that is like psychologically and physically draining, don't add a second one to that. Let's keep it at 1, or actually I've got capacity for a second one now because that one's not as bad as it was before. Right. But then the next one you bring on, right? Okay, let's make it not an easy one, but let's make it one where it's a bit more light. Yeah,
and I've learned because not all the deals I've done have been successful, right? They've been successful in terms of the outcome we set out at the beginning, but there's some things that even when you fix a distressed business and turn it around, you're still dealing with someone who's got really bad habits. So even though you can tidy up the mess they've made, they still have those fundamental bad habits, and that's something you can't really train them or fix them on,
Do you want to turn your LinkedIn into a selling machine rather than a time sink? Well, that's exactly what I'm helping you do with my step-by-step guide that shows you exactly how I've built my brand, generated inbound leads, and turned my network into paying clients. It covers everything on how to write your profile, post structure and templates you can use, as well as outbound messages to your ideal clients to book meetings with them. This is the exact framework that I've used myself and teach inside my coaching program, condensed into one short, actionable guide that you can implement straight away. You can grab your copy at the link in the show notes or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, the word guide, and I'll send it straight to you. See when you get brought into business, that sort of consulting for Exley headline we use just now, that wrapper that we might well update. Is there times where they're very agreeable to bring you in initially, but then some of the medicine you want to prescribe to them based on your diagnosis of what's going on in the business, they maybe don't like the pill that you're asking them to swallow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got, and again, it's understand why, right? It took me a while to understand this, but these guys have ran their business on their own. they're the boss, and then they put their hand up, desperate for help. You come in, you help them, but fundamentally still want to be the boss. They don't want a partner alongside them, trying to strategically grow the business. They would just want, no, this is my business. Let me do everything. So there's that bit of tension in there, and I've definitely become better at identifying these types of triggers at the beginning, and even structuring deals a bit differently now. If I was to do
it's
that,
a lesson learned, isn't it?
Oh, totally. Made a lot of mistakes on that one.
I think, as you say, the personality types that come in, somebody that's dragged it from 0 to 1 or 0 to 5 million, whatever it is, they know they need the help, but sometimes they're not ready to hear it until it absolutely needs to happen.
Yeah, and some of these businesses I'm talking about, these were extremely distressed, really high debts, no cash. They took out all the cash flow loans available to them, signed up to personal guarantees, like all the textbook stuff you shouldn't do. But again, lack of education, all these kind of high interest loan companies are basically giving you it, but then no one realises the small print they're signing up to. So I've come into these businesses and I've done 12 or 13 of these turnarounds in different forms, and you get rid of the liabilities in a structured way that's completely above board. Help them with the cash flow loans in terms of structuring them a bit differently, get them out of the hole. But that's such a big event, and it's condensed within maybe 90 days. You can't replicate that after that. Once you do that big bang, it's like
the nuclear button. You've pressed it and the missiles have launched. We just have to accept that's what happened. We can't press it again because we need to reload.
Totally. And you to eliminate £2-3 million worth of liability in a completely structured way, you can't replicate that more than once. Once you've done that, you've done it. It's the biggest event you can give them, and you can put all the systems and structure after that. But it's almost, and some people and some characters like that's great, but what have you done for me lately? So there's a bit of that, and that's why distressed businesses, I tend to stay away from them. Apart from 1 or 2, I've done maybe 3 or 4 this year. But profitable businesses are more fun, that's for sure. Yeah.
What are some of the big things that you do when you go in? So you mentioned there for a distressed business, it's to do with the liability side of things. You're going into something that's profitable, but it's not working quite as it should. What are some of the big changes you make?
The 3 main things we focus on, usually in any business, is cash flow first. Get that in place. If there's no forecast or no structure around that, let's predictably get this cash flow in place. We understand what's coming in, what's going out, and again, that's pretty simple. It's not actually that complicated. It can be as simple as a 13-week rolling spreadsheet, and it is just a spreadsheet, or it can be more complex if you want to invest in something. But that gives you a look into the future. Then it's a sales pipeline, and then it's lead generation. So we look at all these 3 things in tandem, make sure they're all working together, because you'll know this with your sales background. If you've not got sales coming in, that's the oxygen of the business. If there's no sales coming in, it's going to go under. If there's nobody protecting the cash when it comes in, if there's nobody working on bringing leads in for somebody like yourself to close those sales, it's hiding to nothing.
It's funny. I definitely want to talk about the AI side of things that you've really delved into in the last year in particular, since we've been speaking more. But when you think about those 3 core fundamentals, it should be a surprise that those aren't being optimized. But you've gone into businesses, and we don't need to name them on camera, certainly not, that are of a really good size that don't have, for example, the cash flow dialed in. Their sales process is nonsense. Like
there is no sales process.
Yeah, some of the clients that I've worked with, and Chris Burns is really good on this. We were talking about this the other day. They just run on vibes.
Yeah.
So like their sales process is literally like, how busy are we just now? Is my wealth thermostat happy with where we're at just now in terms of monthly revenue or quarterly revenue, or are we worried? I'm going to work harder if I'm worried. And then their CRM is like a wish list of like clients that we might want to work with, but we have, like, when was the last time you contacted them? Not sure. What did we say to them last time? Not sure. What are we going to say to them next? No idea. Yeah. Oh, well, we're going to do a Black Friday offer. You're like, holy shit, you are all up shit creeks with a paddle. Whereas, and systematize is such a commonly used term, and a lot of people don't see what sits behind that, but it's building the structure and the processes for them to just follow on autopilot, regardless how you feel. So on Monday, you've had a heavy weekend. It doesn't matter. I know exactly what good looks like by the end of the week, or I know what average looks like, I know what bad looks like. And I think so many people don't know what that looks like. And even from like a time management and energy perspective, and one of the recent things I did for the email list was release a productivity guide that was structured around, regardless of how you feel, have this process in place to know what a good week looks like in terms of what you want to get done and how you want to fit it in and how you want to feel and how you want to operate within that. And people benefit massively from just having something to aim towards.
Yeah, business is simple, right? It's not actually that difficult. Do those main core things consistently well all the time and you'll be fine. But people like to overcomplicate it, and I mean we all get distracted by different things, and AI is something that we'll talk about, but that can easily be a distraction as well. But fundamentally, what is a business? You need to make cash, you need to make sales, you need to bring leads into the business. It's pretty simple. And as long as you've got a process around all of them, and I mean there's other factors, right? But those are the three main things that we focus on. If you do that, you'll be absolutely fine.
With those three things then, AI partners, that sort of newer title that you've learned into, what sort of tools or things are you putting into those three that have really helped?
So I suppose the new way of framing this, which is kind of what I've been doing anyway, certainly with the businesses that I own just now, is AI operating partner. So operating partner is a term from the private equity world, and they're not a consultant, they're not a coach, they're somebody who gets their hands dirty, reports to the private equity firm, is above the executive team, and they're really there to drive growth, increase profit, run more efficiently, and potentially build towards an exit, right? So operating partner's been around for a while in that world, and that's kind of what I've been doing. But AI's here now, and it's hard for us all to ignore it. It's impossible to ignore it. And it was something I realised fairly early on that I needed to augment with AI. And that doesn't mean AI is going to replace me. It doesn't mean AI is going to replace everybody listening to this podcast. But if you're in business, you should, in any profession, to be honest, you should be looking to augment. How can it improve what I do? How can I work smarter, harder? So in the business world, an AI operating partner, which is what I do and what I teach others how to do, it's taking the raw skills that you've already got, maybe learning some new ones, and augmenting with AI. So it could be a sales process, could be a tool that listens to your sales calls and improves your conversion rate. It could be an email and AI SDR agent that basically sends emails en masse and then speaks to the prospect without you doing any manual work, and it books a call directly into your calendar. It could be a knowledge base that you create. So if you're selling a business, you can now get an AI agent and you can upload all of your SOPs, all your documents, all your WhatsApp messages, your email history, your voice notes. You can upload everything into this, and that's what can become valuable. So your staff can ask it quick. Your staff can ask this AI agent
questions. It's your intellectual property, isn't it?
Correct. There's so many things, but AI, for everyone listening, if you're not doing it, you have to start dabbling in it and picking something that's actually going to move the needle. So that, going back to your other point, does it improve the profit? Does it improve the cash position? Does it give me more leads? Does it help me do more sales? Focus on those key things.
Yeah, I think, as you say, AIfication is such a fetishized thing online. Everyone's so excited and a bit horny about it. But if it's a tool that improves your efficiency, that's great. So for my consulting business, one of the tools I use is Gamma.app or Gamma.ai, which is for presentations.
Great, isn't it?
My slides look phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I feed it. So I'm still doing all the work for writing exactly what's going to go within the slides, because if you put in so for example, I think I said this in a solo pod, make sure you click preserve exact text, otherwise you get this AI Americanized gunk, right?
Yeah.
And it just ruins what you've written. Now your presentation will double in size, but that's not really what you're looking for. What you're looking for is the graphics and the design of it, where it's put the image, which would take me hours on Canva, or I'd have to pay a marketing consultant for. So in terms of replacing jobs, I think they're a bit fucked for that sort of thing. Like, I make amazing presentations. No,
not anymore,
you're completely done. 45 seconds my Gamma took me, and I had to tweak 2 images on it.
Yeah.
Who's laughing now?
Yeah.
So that's something that's saved me a tremendous amount of time and energy. So again, one of the last keynotes that I did, compared to the keynote I did in January this year, my prep time was, in terms of the actual making of the content, not how I was going to deliver it and what I was going to speak about, was 10%, 5%, maybe less.
Yep.
And that is so much time that I got back to then get ready for another keynote, or to do more content, or to basically feed the machine and do revenue generating activities, not the kind of marketing niceties that are necessary, but they're not necessary to be done by me anymore.
Yeah, and that presentation that it spat out in 2 minutes or 30 seconds is actually probably given you inspiration to deliver a better pitch, because I've used it so many times as well, especially when I'm on a sales presentation to a prospect, and it brings the whole thing to life. Like we're all quite visual anyway in some regard, so when that produces a presentation like that, it's incredible. And then you look at so I've spent thousands and thousands of pounds on websites over the years, £8,000-10,000 on a website, and places like Lovable now you can build it for pounds, and it's amazing website, cracking. And so there is industries that are heavily affected, but you can still augment with it and protect what you've got, even if you are a professional services businesses, which are probably typically the ones that are most at risk. Law firms, accountancy, marketing, those types of businesses. It's not too late to augment, but you should start doing it now.
And make it more efficient as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the key thing. It's like asking yourself what would make this easier, and then finding a tool that solves that. And some of the tools are still in beta, but a lot of them are quite developed now. So the version of Gamma that I've got is better than the one that I used in June.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if this keeps getting better and better, then my marketing spend is going to get even less, and I'm still going to create great slide decks for my presentations for my clients, great slide decks for any keynotes that I give, great stuff for any sort of ebooks that I'm producing for the email list as well, in terms of guides as well.
Well, from your point of view, exactly, how many more sales presentations can you get through? How many more talks on stage can you get through? It's insane. Some of these tools can do the job far better than you ever could.
Yeah.
And that's not a slight on you or I, it's just that they're built for that.
More leads, more meetings, more quotes, more proposals, and closing a higher percentage of those. That's exactly what it's time to unlock with my sales masterclass. I've distilled down over 15 years of sales experience across B2B and B2C into some actionable lessons which you can benefit from. Clients that I've worked with one-to-one over the last 6 to 18 months have had incredible results, and it's now time for me to share with you an easier way to work with me rather than on a one-to-one basis. To get involved, hit the link in the show notes or under this description wherever you're watching this to join today's waiting list, and there's even some free goodies in there for you while you wait for the course to go live.
Something we spoke about, and you sort of gave me a positive nudge on, which I really value from the right people, was talking about consulting for equity using my sales skills. For somebody listening to this, what sort of skills might they have that would allow them to perhaps do their first acquisition or their first consulting for equity, or that first sort of slice of a business that they're maybe interested in working with?
So I had 25 founders come through a mentorship program in the summer, and one of the strategies that I was teaching was consulting for equity, and it was more a kind of hands-on mentorship thing. The biggest challenge that people have when it comes to executing on that strategy is they don't quite know how to position themselves properly, and I know that's something that you pride yourself on. Your whole ecosystem around what you do is perfect, but for somebody wanting to do that, you need to be really clear on what it is you can do for a business, what value you can bring. Because ultimately, if you're, this is the misconception with consulting for equity, right? Is people think it's only £1 deals. It's not. You can acquire a stake in a business by using different finance options to take that stake. You just don't necessarily need to use your own money. So there's a lot of different ways to structure it. But if you're going to do it, you need to be clear on what you solve. You then need to find businesses with that challenge. So most businesses have, as we've mentioned, same sorts of challenges, right? Cash flow. So all of them have a cash flow problem. If you're good at finance, if you're a CFO, if you're a finance director, and you're really good at cash flow and you're really good at pricing jobs and all that sort of stuff,
There's your value.
There's your value. For them to find somebody that can do that job is going to cost them a hell of a lot of money. They might not trust somebody. So if you're coming in and offering that solution, you're extremely valuable. So you're exchanging your value for equity. I'll come to this again later if I've got time. That's maybe a kind of slightly older strategy now, and there's a new wrapper around that. If you're good at marketing, if you're good at sales, and they've got a sales problem, okay, well, I'll come in and I'll improve your conversion rate by 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever it is. I'll put a system in place. Here's the result at the end of it. I'm going to give you more sales. So I'm going to take you from £1 million up to £1.5 million just by improving your conversion rate on your sales team and coaching them and giving them a script, all this sort of stuff. By the way, if I don't achieve that inside 12 months, then that 10% that you've gifted me, I'll gift you it back. In that time, though, you've earned loyalty, because you've earned trust. You've earned a retainer. Normally, you would negotiate a retainer during that process. And when you've built that trust and rapport, they don't want to get rid of you as long as you've given them value. You know, they're not going to say, "Oh, Colin, you've only gave me 500 grand extra instead of 700 grand. Can you go away?" They're going to really value what you've brought to the table.
I think that's great. And I talk a lot about afters on the podcast, or where do you take somebody from the current state to the desired state? And people don't think enough about what's the desired state or what's the after effect that people want from your work. So I think with consulting there, you have a clear direction of travel where you want to get them to, and you have your way is the bridge that takes them from where they're at just now to where they want to get to, and then agreeing along the way those different sorts of exit points or penalties or fees or changes to the structure of it as well. And I think it shows that you back yourself for what you're going to be able to cause to them. And I think if your skill set is good enough, like you say, whether it's sales or whether it's like that sort of financial expertise around cash flow and cash management and making sure the business is actually functional and profitable and with enough cash in the bank to deal with the curveballs which are coming thick and fast, as we maybe will speak about, that is something that really kind of, it should open people's eyes listening to the podcast, because how people listen to this have lots of skills. They just haven't maybe thought about applying them in this way.
Yeah, they've probably not packaged them or thought about it like that. There's so many businesses that have issues that they're almost desperate to be fixed. They don't know how to fix them, and if you position yourself properly, you can get a slice of the upside. Everyone's a winner in that situation though, and the business owner has got what he wanted. You've got a slice of the pie. The reason that strategy in this day and age, taking a stake in a business, whatever form, whatever wrapper we want to put around that, the reason that's really important, in my opinion now, is jobs are at risk, right? You need to diversify your income streams where you can across multiple assets. You know, if you've got even 2 or 3 small minority stakes in 2 or 3 different types of businesses, you've spread your risk across multiple assets. So if one goes under for whatever reason, you're not at risk. And I know, again, maybe some people talk about my show, the corporate world that you came from, that you probably didn't expect that from that furniture company. And I know you had things, you know, you had a moat around it anyway.
I did.
But for somebody else, that would have been fatal.
Yeah, that's right. And I spoke about this on the solo pod, like the people that were going to go back into the employed world. I've got a wedding to pay for, I've got a kid coming, I've got this mortgage, I've just moved house. They were more shaken by it because they didn't have the whole analogy I was using, which was the parachute to jump out and the launch pad to spring off when I landed. It's just about thinking about that, because you can look at businesses that on paper or from the outside looking in look like they're quote unquote smashing it or doing really, really well, but that's not always the case.
No, they've got the fancy office, they've got the owners driving about a nice car, but underneath it's chaos. Do
you think the political environment in the UK just now means there's going to be more of these opportunities to rescue businesses or to turn them around?
We're getting political now. Love it. This is my first question for you, Marshall. Yeah, it's not business friendly, is it? I mean, and it's getting worse. Daniel Priestley, who I know you had on, and I think we're both big fans of, he talks about this pendulum effect where it's gone so far to one side that it's got to come back. But I mean, we can't go much further on. That's right. On that side, because businesses.
Well, we can if we get the Green Party, which genuinely terrifies me.
Yeah. I'll be honest, right? Obviously, being here, I don't have too much.
Don't spend too much bandwidth on it. It's not worth it for it. It'll tire you out, especially if you're not in the UK and your family are here, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, it's not been business friendly for a while. Business in the UK is still fundamentally good. I just wouldn't live there for the foreseeable.
I understand.
But you know, there's obviously more taxation coming. It's hard. I mean, some of the businesses we've got in the UK, their employment costs, for example, have went up.
The NI
massively.
Increase was so ill thought through. Unless you believe that they're doing it on purpose, which I think I'm of that opinion just now. But that hit people so hard, 3%. And 3% isn't a 3% increase. It's like more than double basically, because sorry, I won't rant too much on that because it's not worth it, but employment costs are going up. So it's getting harder.
I love this stuff.
It's getting harder and harder for businesses to be profitable, and that hurts jobs down the line. And you get people like, oh, capitalism means that the owner takes all the money, and you're like, no, they employ thousands of people who use that to pay for their groceries, their accommodation, their flat, their car, their transport. And employers are a good thing. Let's not destroy employers.
I think I might get the figures mixed up here, right? But I think 95% of the British economy is made up by small businesses. It's the engine of the UK economy, and you're treated like scum. I don't know why anyone would start a business right now from scratch. Maybe unless it was in the AI space and you can leverage a lot of different tools, but starting a capex heavy, people heavy business right now
Really
is suicidal. Which again is why maybe and established businesses are feeling that pain, and that's where rather than you starting a business from scratch, you could potentially just parachute yourself in and everyone benefits
and fix the problems.
Yeah,
the Jeremy Harbour episode really blew people's minds because they were always like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it must be your own thing. But you can become an entrepreneur and join some of these businesses a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in, and if you can bring your skill set and fix those problems, then you're both still entrepreneurs. You're not like you're no less of an entrepreneur because it wasn't your initial venture. Totally.
Well, if you're coming in and you're providing an extra 10-50% of profit, who's more valuable in that situation? I know there's obviously yin and yang there, but people start a business without all those skill sets, and they get to a point and maybe they need sales support, they need cash flow support, whatever it may be. So there's huge opportunities to do that. But there is, again, like the business you're involved in, there's so many of these businesses that are on the brink. They're literally teetering on the edge. And again, that's why a lot of people are moving to Dubai. A lot of people are outsourcing their employment now to South Africa,
That's right.
Philippines. etc. It's more cost effective.
Yeah, definitely, and that can only be bad for the UK economy because more and more people out of work means a bigger welfare bill.
Yep.
And
who's paying for that?
Well, exactly, the small and a smaller tax base, because people like yourself, people like myself, are considering leaving the UK because we feel the tax environment's so unfair and we're not getting value for money. Whereas I think if you paid tax and you saw that it was being used for healthcare, education in a way that you agreed with, safety, police, defence, all these things that are fundamental to society.
Can you name one thing that's improved in the last 10 years?
No, nothing. And I include the Conservative Party within that as well.
Yeah.
Like they completely sold the right of centre voters down the river because they didn't deliver a right of centre agenda at all. In fact, they delivered this sort of centrist, leftist, globalist agenda. And that's why people feel aggrieved.
Yeah.
And if they look at more and more money going to HMRC, and you see all these viral reels just now, it's like, remember what it's all for? And they pick up the photo, it's like a family photo, but it's HMRC as the logo. And I think that's how so many of us feel just now. And a phrase that I'm trying to remember who the exact quote, I quoted it in the last solo podcast, I had it in front of me, but what can't go on won't go on. And it's the whole pendulum swinging back thing. It can't continue at this pace, otherwise the UK will become a failed state. And that's not something I want, because it's a project and it's a country, it's a nation that I'm extremely proud to be from and be part of. And I just don't want to see it keep going the way it's going. Over the last 5 years, I've sat down with over 330 guests on Camera Conversations, from athletes to entrepreneurs, scientists and thinkers, all trying to answer the same question: how do we live, perform, and generally be better? I've distilled down everything that I've learned from that 5-year period into a brand new guide, 20 lessons from Camera Conversations, covering mindset, money, performance, and meaning. Inside, you'll find some of the biggest ideas from the likes of Chris Williamson, Craig Ballantyne, Sterling Cooper, Nia Rel, and many, many more. These are not just sound bites, these are actionable principles and lessons that you can take on board. Whether you want to level up your mindset, your business, or your health, this guide gives you the shortcuts to do just that. You can hit the link in the show notes today to download it for free, or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, the word lessons, to get involved.
I listened to your solo pod this morning. Like, Scotland is one of the best places in the world when it's on form and singing or dancing, but that's very infrequent. And like, I was back in the UK recently for a business trip.
I saw that.
And honestly, I mean, there's a massive contrast, right? And you've got to take that in consideration, Dubai, because of what it's like here. It's probably the only place in the world that's like this. But everything's run down. Glasgow, I couldn't believe the state of Glasgow when I was going through there. And the local community where I was staying at the time, Whitburn, awful. Like, everywhere's run down. There's no investment in any of these things. So we're paying more tax, or not anymore. A lot of people are paying tax, and you're not seeing any material benefit to your life. In fact, your life's getting worse. You're having to work more hours, both husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, having to work a job just to, like, 50 grand a year is not a lot of money anymore in the UK. It used to be that you could have a whole family on that easily.
Yeah, go on a holiday a year. Yeah,
easily.
Whereas that's not the case anymore. That's inflation as well, and like the whole fiat system, and the money's totally debased. And I guess just before we kind of wrap up with like some sort of rallying cry to people for what they should do, I think if you are discontent with the direction of travel in the UK, keep having conversations with your friends and your family members and your colleagues about what a better UK would look like.
Yeah.
Don't be shouted down by the latest ism or calling you a bigot or an ist or whatever they use to try and tear you down. Talk about these things publicly, and when it comes to the ballot box at the Scottish Parliament elections this year, vote for somebody that actually might try and change the direction of the UK, and do the same at the Westminster elections whenever that may come, depending on how long Starmer holds his government together for. So be vocal, be active about what you think the country should look like. Don't be shy or reserved, because I think part of the reason the C19 scam went on for so long is because people were so terrified to speak out because they think they'd lose their job, or if they didn't wear the mask or take the vaccine they would get excommunicated.
Couldn't go on holiday.
Yeah, exactly. So this time round, don't fail that test, because the way that we're going is not acceptable for any of us, or any of us that are right thinking. So push back, be vocal about it, and then when you do have that vote, use it strategically and use it correctly as well. But something I wanted to ask is a bit of parting advice for people when it comes to them maybe thinking about this acquisition space. What would be the first place for somebody to start and consider how they might get involved in that first business?
So before you invest in maybe a mentor, because I think that would be the first step, whether it's me or someone else, right? Understand what you want in life, what you're maybe good at, your skills. Understand that first before you start spending money on stuff that you might not get a result from, because there's so many people that do go on these courses and they don't apply what they've learned. The knowledge is sound, but you've got to apply it. It's like anything. So many people don't do that, as you know. But in terms of the acquisition stuff, right, there's two main things that I certainly advise people and help people on. It's how to become an AI operating partner, which is the new wrapper for consulting for equity, how to do that and all the structure around that. And then I do that myself. So I go into businesses and I deploy all these strategies I talk about. So private equity, AI operating systems, etc. Put these systems in place, bridge the delta from where they are now to where they want to be, and help them sell that business for the sum they want. So there's a bunch of offshoots from that, which probably for another podcast. But yeah, I think the key takeaway here is that, in my opinion, generalists, coaches, consultants, even professionals within a business, you're at risk. You need to augment with AI in your own current job. Start learning how to use it, even if your boss isn't, on
board with it. You take the time away to go on YouTube, go on a course, and actually get those skills, because it'll make you more efficient.
Totally. But if you're a consultant, I know. So the benefit for you, Colin, is you've got a lot of actual niche experience. Really, really good experience. But there's a lot of general coaches out there. There's one or two that have copied my post recently, I think, about.
I saw that.
It's crazy.
Strange people, mate.
Oh, madness. And there's a lot of them
Check
out
their
there.
hard drive.
But yeah, totally. But those people are the ones that are massive at risk. They'll be the ones that are totally wiped out, because somebody can pay £20 a month for ChatGPT and get that advice that you're churning out.
Yeah.
Is bullshit advice. You need to have lived it and breathed it. So yeah, understand what you're good at, what you want to do. And then if you're interested in that sort of stuff, there's lots of people out there like me that educate people and mentor people. Go and speak to somebody that you resonate with, that speaks the same language as you.
Yeah. I think that skills identification piece is really important, because if we are moving into this AI-fied world, identifying what helps you stand out while using a bit of AI to make you really efficient and good at that, and then think about what impact can I have on a business, what sector is that business in, how do I want that to look, do I want that to be a couple of days a week working for them, like I'm doing some fractional sales director stuff. It's not got consulting for equity, but maybe I'll start to learn about that through you when we go for a cigar with Steven Pettigrew later, and hopefully see Rangers win too.
Hopefully.
Got that in there. And if you can have that clearer in your head, then it's going to give you options down the line. And I think one of the most important things when we're talking about the political environment is, like what happened to me with a business going sideways, have options off the back of it that you might be able to move towards in the future, because that is what we all want. We want a lifestyle that's a little bit more agency and control, rather than autopilot and being railroaded to whatever direction.
Yeah, and I don't know how long we've got, but the kind of, I suppose, final point on the AI operating partner education piece around consultant for equity, right, is there's typically 5 income streams from that, right? So right now people are getting a wage or a retainer, but there's retainers, there's profit share, there's revenue share, there's affiliates, and there could be equity as well if you negotiate that on an exit. So there's 5 potential income streams against one just now, and if you've got that option across multiple businesses, you can quickly see how that can increase your income,
It's
increase your wealth.
diversification, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that. That's a tremendous piece of value for us to wrap up on as well and get the listener thinking as well. Stephen, it's been great to have you on the show. If listeners want to continue the conversation, where should they head towards?
I'm most active on LinkedIn, so at Steven Pettigrew Investor, you'll find me on there. And I've got a new website, which will be up and running by the time this is out, stephenpettigrew.co.uk.
Perfect. That'll be linked in the show notes. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you again very, very soon.